Here. This is Burning Questions Saturday Night Live, and we are a minute early, but that's okay. We'll just chit chat. Thanks for joining us. This is kind of a fun thing to do. We get a lot of sound questions during the week, and so we thought what we would do is to gather them and put them in a format where they can easily be accessed. So that's what we're doing. So tonight we have one of the moderators of our wonderful page, Science of Reading, What I Should Have Learned in College. This is Jennifer Cyr. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Donna. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Jennifer is a school reading specialist, and she's an OG tutor and a district letters trainer in New Hampshire. And she lives in Maine. So you have to cross the border every day when you go to work?
I do, but it's very close to the border. It's about a 15-mile drive, and it's lovely because I have little kids, so I get to decompress every day on the way home from work.
On the way home. I know that ride. I had a half-hour ride. It was wonderful. So she lives in Maine with her husband and 3 daughters. And she has a really interesting story about her training. So I'd like Jennifer to share that out before we get started tonight.
Sure. So I've been hanging around on this site for a while, and I think one of the things that I can share with everyone is that I work for a school district that has really invested in SOR for a long time. So we were reading first schools in our district, and we were really lucky because our district purchased excellent core programs right off the bat and then invested heavily in its teaching staff. So through that process, I was able to attend really great training. I attended letters training twice, right? Because I attended once as a participant through the Reading First grant, and then once to receive trainers training so that I could then go ahead and teach the teachers that entered my school district, which really helped us to keep the science of reading going in our district. And I am a program trainer in the district. I help implement the LIPS program. I help implement the spelling program. We're in the middle of implementing a brand new core, so that's pretty exciting. And I'm learning right along with the teachers. The science is always changing, but I think one thing that really helps is having administrators who are behind this and are willing to invest in this and invest in teachers. Mm-hmm. I really can't imagine going anywhere else and having to start over.
I can't imagine why you would. It sounds like it's a wonderful deal. How long have you folks been doing that?
We won our first Reading First grant, I want to say 2006. And that was when the administrators, the superintendent started getting on board. That was just one school, but then over time, there were 3 schools who participated. I helped write the grant and got hired as the reading coach for my school. So I was right on board right around 2007, and I've been really going hard with SOR ever since.
That's really exciting to be involved at the beginning and to see all the hard work and the fruition. How are your kids doing? How do they do? How are your scores?
Well, we have seen tremendous improvement. So when we first started implementing the tenets of the Reading First grant, we invested in our scientifically based assessment. We used DIBELS, all right? And we started to collect our data. So when we first started collecting our data, 2006, I remember having a data team meeting, and I want to say it was something like 35% of our second graders were on level. And we were looking at that data and saying, there is no way that I can take pride in this idea that, 65% of my kids are not going to be reading at second grade level by the end of the year. It just seemed insane to me. So having these conversations around data really started to open teachers' eyes to what needed to happen to change. And because we progress monitored regularly, we did our benchmark testing, and we met for data very frequently, then we were able to see our scores rise, right?
Oh, that's exciting.
So by the end of the year, I would say that by the end of that year, that first year, we were seeing scores in the 70s.
Oh
Which is
my
fantastic.
goodness.
And then by the end of that year, by the end of that, the cycle, because we participated in the grant for about 3 years, we were consistently seeing K1 and 2 in the late 70s and 80s. We always wanted to hit that 90, but it's very, very hard to do. And then I moved to a smaller school, and my first grade teacher and kindergarten teacher voluntarily took Orton Gillingham training. So they are Orton Gillingham trained. I'm Orton Gillingham trained. Our special educator is Orton Gillingham trained. So for the first time in my life, we were seeing K in first grade hit the 90s.
Oh my goodness, that gives me goosebumps. It's so exciting.
Right? And then they can go to second grade and they're ready to learn,
Exactly. Oh, good for you.
So
Wonderful.
This year has been a challenge for everyone in the whole country, right?
Sure.
So our data is not too pretty right now, but we know what to do. So we're working very hard.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer. We're going to get started.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. Where did it go? Oh boy. There's that. All right. Hang on, folks. Maybe it's over here. We'll go back here. All right, now. See, I'm really not good about this part here. Here we go. All right, which one do we start with?
Start with the nope. Yes, the one up top that says, yes, the one up top that is
you want to start there?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
These were complex questions, guys. You won't blame me for needing to pre-record this.
All right, you ready, folks?
I'm muting.
Here we go.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Cyr, and I am happy to address your burning questions for this week. All right. The first question I'd like to address has to do with diacritical markings of words. And so the question was, what is a umlaut, diaeresis? Okay, so we have some words here, mute and flute. And today I'm going to demonstrate how you mark the different sounds that the letter U is representing in these words. So in the word mute, the U represents the sound U. It's a diphthong, but it's also considered the primary long vowel sound. And so we mark it with a macron. Okay, as I'm instructing my students, I will say that the E does not have a unique sound. It works together with the U. So I do slash through the E, and then I create a mark to represent the connection between the U and the E. All right, but when it comes to the word flute, the U is representing the sound U. And so this is where the umlaut comes in. So here is my umlaut. And when I mark it here, then I can recognize that this word represents the sound U. The E is still considered a partner. Students have to be flexible because this is an articulation issue. They have to try the word, pronounce it. One way is going to be articulated a little more easily than the other. So that is why we have multiple sounds for this symbol. By the way, you can also say ah, right, when it's a short vowel, and it can say oh. And so it's important for kids to be able to understand the distinction because this letter does play so many roles. All right. The other question was about, what's a diaeresis then? Diaeresis is the same two dots that I use to represent an umlaut. However, in a word like Chloe, it represents a separate vowel sound. So here I have Chloe. The O represents O. The E maintains a unique sound. So this diaresis helps to signify that the E is pronounced in the word Chloe. In the word naive, right? The A sounds kind of like an I. Thank you, etymology. The I sounds like an E, but it doesn't say A, like in paint. So the diaresis lets me know that the I maintains its own sound. The E, you might wonder, is doing the job of pairing with the V, which doesn't end words in English, right? Or in this French virgin word. So there you have it. The symbol looks the same, but it's doing multiple jobs, just like the E does multiple jobs. All right, we had a question about schwa. So schwa is a German word for empty. When a sound is not accented in a multisyllabic word or in an R-control vowel word, we use the schwa to kind of show that the vowel shifts a little bit. So in the word banana, the first A says ah, right? Represents the sound ah. That is a schwa. And that happens because it is the middle sound that is accented. I consider this the syllable. Now you can argue with me, guys, and multiple programs teach this more than one way, but this A is affected by the N that follows it, right? I say banana, that's a nasalized A. And even though my N tends to shift and follow my final schwa, it serves the function of making this a closed syllable, which is why I'm going to syllabicate today. BA, this would be an open exception. Nan, that would be closed. Ah, open exception. You can, different programs will cover this in different ways. So when talking about how to identify the accent, the first thing we have to do is get kids to pronounce it. So we'll put our hand under our chin and feel the syllables. Ba, nan, ah, 3 syllables. Then we do something we call calling the dog. So I pretend that I have a dog named Banana. He's far away and I'm going to call him. And the syllable that I enunciate the longest and the loudest, that is my accented syllable. So testing it with this word, I would go banana. And you can hear that my B sorry about that, has my schwa. My nan has the most regular vowel sound. So that's my accented syllable. And my ah is another schwa. So what I do then is I take my squares and the unaccented syllables move down. My accented is placed a little higher on the board. And so children can identify the accented syllable using manipulatives. Okay, I'm using a Jamboard now because this works for remote learning. However, in real life, I would have felt squares and letter tiles that we would use to map out the word. All right. I hope that helps a little bit with introducing accent in multisyllabic words. And the fact is the schwas will exist in unaccented syllables. So that also helps a little bit with schwa. We would actually have a schwa tile then that we would pull in and help kids to mark where the schwa exists, right? And it just helps keep them mindful of when spelling patterns are challenging. Okay, finally, let's really think about how we teach vowel consonant E. So this is a very tricky concept. And the first point I need to make is that you can't spend enough time teaching and reinforcing closed syllables. Okay, closed syllables are very important and we can't rush them. Once kids are solid in closed syllables, then they'll be able to function with the idea of a vowel, consonant, E syllable. So I like to teach using lots of contrast. So let's consider the closed syllable mut. Okay, I keep shifting back and forth to make manipulating my tiles easier, but here's and in the word mut, we use two T's to represent the T. Okay. This also helps to ensure that I read this as a closed syllable. Notice that I've chosen a pink color code because in my program, red and pink represent short vowels. Yellow does represent consonants. If I wanted to then teach the kids to contrast with mute, I would use still yellow for my consonant, but I would shift color for the vowel U. And I bring in my silent E. And I definitely take the time to mark it. So there's my breath. U, there's my macron. There is my magic or silent E, depending on how your program wants you to teach it. All right, and notice the U here says U, so it gets the macron, not the umlaut, which we just learned about today. All right, and then I would continue this process with other words. So, gotta clip that P, Mrs. Cyr. Oh, I want to use short vowel. I bring in my E. Get my marker ready. Yeah, in about 10 minutes. And there's my macron. Nope, that's my breath. That's my breath. That's my macron. All right, so marking will help kids as they are learning to read and pronounce words. It will help them to understand it. And then when you shift to multisyllabic words, it will help them with breaking and blending multisyllabic words, which is the big purpose for all of this. Please put your questions in the comments. I'm happy to clarify. I would probably message you personally with your clarifications. Be kind. Remember, programs teach these things in different ways, and my training might be different than your training. I do find that the methods that I use and the programs that I use have been helpful to my students. All right, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, so you know what something funny happened, of course, which is I shared the before video, Donna, and I had gotten some great feedback from my fellow moderator, Dawn, about the actual pronunciation of
Yes.
the diacritical marking. So I need to clarify that, you know, in my background, you know, my family, I would have said bref because it's French, but it's really brief. And then it's not macron, it's macron. And I looked it up to make sure that that was the real truth, but I re-recorded this video with the correct terminology and shared the incorrect video with Donna. So everything else, though, I stand by. I think it turned out good.
So macron is spelled M-A-C-R-O-N, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So the M-A is open, may.
Yes.
And then the CR is a blend and short in a closed syllable. And then the bre is a breve.
Yes.
Because there's it's VE at
Mm-hmm.
the end, but that's because V never stands alone, but it indeed is a long E sound.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I had my letters training so long ago, and I'm sure Dr. Tolman said it correctly, but I translated it into my own language when I made that video. That one it's funny because it was made at school. It was my rough draft video. So you can hear my students in the background.
I did hear your students. Okay, now let me see here. I have to get back. Oh, this drives me crazy. I am not good about this part. I apologize. All right, let's go to, I'm gonna stop, oh, maybe not. I want to get back up here. Let me stop share and let me go back to, all right, hang on, folks. I don't know how to get out of here. We might be stuck here today. Yeah, I don't know how to get out of here. Let me see.
I have
Here we go.
the video.
right.
If you can't share it, I can.
I got it. Okay,
Okay.
so now I'm going to start. Where are we now? That was the first one. Now we're going to do this one.
Right, the one with the burning question mark.
Yep. And we're going to share it. Screen share. Here we go. All right, we're rocking and rolling here. Oh, I like your.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Jen Cyr again. I am a moderator on this Facebook page, and I am happy to share with you my best answers for our burning questions for this week. This is part 2, where I will discuss co-articulation, etymology, and one random question about sound calls. I'm using Google Slides for this presentation. All right. So co-articulation, which I normally would not hyphenate here, affects our phonemes. Think about our short vowel, in apple. Okay, that is what we would consider the kind of original phoneme for a. A says a. However, what happens when you take a and you surround it by other consonants is the quality of the vowel is affected by the consonants that surround us. So that explains the pronunciation of the a phoneme in words like man, where the a is followed by an n, and that sound travels up the nose and it becomes nasalized. And so instead of sounding like a, it sounds more like eh. Right. Another example of co-articulation is what happens when a follows woo. Right. If you think about the sound wa, the a becomes more rounded, and it sounds more like, you know, what we would think of as a short o. So we have wa where this happens, and then it shifts again, or shifts in a similar way when the a precedes the phoneme o, okay? And it sounds more like ah, as in fall or almost, all right? So all of this is co-articulation, and I will speak to how we instruct to that in just a minute. We have a specific question about the word bok. So if you think about bok, tuck, and chalk, okay, we have the a, which precedes the L, which is we would consider a liquid sound. So it really does affect the phonemes around it. But when you travel from the B to the K, right, that open sound forces your mouth to shift in such a way that the old phoneme just kind of disappears in those words, right? One more example is our R-controlled vowels. So we have a word like car, where the quality of the A changes so dramatically that we consider our control vowels to be their own phoneme type, right? And when we represent that as a phoneme grapheme, we know that there really is kind of this distorted vowel attached to the R, but it is such a distinction that we keep the two letters together and consider it one phoneme for our instruction, right? Co-articulation can help explain kids' spelling errors. So I want you to think for a second about the word train. Okay, we know by looking at the word that the phonemes are t, a, n. Okay, however, when I co-articulate those sounds together, something funny happens. It's a co-articulation that we call affrication. Okay, so when I pronounce it, it's just train, and the first phoneme my mouth produces is really ch. Okay, so this affrication of that consonant can account for why some kids spell train with a ch or ch. Okay, something happens with spider, right, where it's got the unvoiced consonant following the s, and when I co-articulate, it comes out voiced because it's preceding a vowel, and vowel is voiced. So, you know, the human brain and mouth are taking shortcuts, and it's pronounced as spider. So if they spell it S-B-I-D-E-R, that's not really a big mystery. Kids who do this are not really showing deficiency in phonemic awareness. They are requiring instruction in spelling and in phonics. We had specific questions about our control vowels. So I wanted to preface this by saying that a lot of this has to do with co-articulation, and we have to teach these patterns directly. So if you think about R, or, right? We want kids to be familiar with them because they're really prevalent in our language. There's a lot of our control vowels in our words. So our strategies are that we teach them to strategize based on frequency of the appearance of the grapheme. And we ask kids to be aware of them and to apply them flexibly. And then after they've built up practice and experience, we allow them to estimate their best guess, but provide them with the opportunity to use tools for checking their work. We had a specific question about wa, as in wash, and that relates to the wa sound in squash, all right? It's just a co-articulation. And so we've kind of gone into that, but programs like the ones I use, okay, like Foundations, Inspire, will teach these as welded or glued units. So rather than having to recognize that ink is I, k, but the is represented by an N, we simplify it. We just teach them that I and K says ink, and they memorize it and practice it, and the load on their phonological processor is decreased a little bit there. When I phoneme grapheme map these though, I always give each phoneme its own box. We have a scope and sequence that we teach by, and as kids encounter words that are beyond our scope and sequence, we may choose to treat words with those patterns as heart words. So this doesn't mean they're irregular. These words follow predictable patterns, but we treat them as heart words so that kids can wrap their heads around them and utilize them right away. Basically, we teach them how to sound out the word, and we identify the part they haven't learned yet by placing a heart over it. The same way we would put a heart over a new regular spelling within a phonemically decodable word. Okay, we had another question about consonant-le syllables. Now, I would like to say that next week's burning questions will be all about syllables and syllable types. However, we kind of talk about this, understanding that final stable syllable is usually 3 graphemes. And so I love to syllabicate these because syllabication and syllable identification is super easy. You take your word and remove all suffixes, and then you start at the E and count back 3 letters, and that generates your final stable syllable, which you read with a schwa ul in this word stable. Then you consider the letters that are left and you identify the syllable type. So in the case of stable, stay is open. And then I have my consonant-le syllable. Considering the word pebble, right? I start at the E, count back 3, there's my bool. But then what's left is a nice, lovely closed syllable. That's why you see doubling in words with consonant-le so that you can maintain your closed syllable. All right, and that works with things that have digraphs, right? You wouldn't have to double anything that has a digraph because you already have 2 consonants in place. All right, here's an example of a final stable syllable featuring a digraph team, beagle,
and one with an or control vowel, hurdle, right? And what we want to do is have kids separate the final stable syllable and then become really good at identifying what the initial syllable is before we get into adding suffixes and crazy business like that. All right, we had a specific question about the word mirror and how to explain its phonology. So sometimes, we cannot use phonology to explain all of our words. Mirror comes from French, right? And so in French, the letter I often represents the sound E. And when you place it in front of an R, it sounds like mirror as opposed to murmur, which would be impossible to say, right? Murmur, juror, murmur, it's messy. So it's much prettier to be able to keep the French vowel and to say mirror. Mirage is a relative of mirror, except this word comes from Arabic. There's a really great site, etymology online, where you can look up origins of words. I would say that understanding etymology for most students comes much later in the scope and sequence. So it's good for you to know and to be able to explain it, but I would expect that students in 3rd, 4th grade can start to really dig into it. Okay, I used some examples of French words on this slide, thinking about the word livre, right, for book, or pièce de résistance. You can see that the I does often take on the long E sound. We had a very specific question about the difference in the O phoneme in the words both, bother, and brother. So I did have to look this one up because all 3 of these words really originate from Old English. Bother originates from Irish English. And if you think about bother, that's the one that's the most phonetically regular, right? You can say the phonemes b, a, th, and you can spell that based on its phonemic sequence, no problem. If you think about brother, well, that follows an R. We already talked about how R complicates things, right? Co-articulation following an R can sometimes be tricky. Maybe not as tricky as preceding an R, but you're with me. Both originated from ancient, English. However, usually it connotated a phrase, both the, and change that to a short O, and you get both the, which is just awkward to say. So I really feel like this was a shortcut humans took with articulation to make our speech more efficient. And I would probably teach this as a heart word or an exception. We teach kind, old, wild words as closed syllable exceptions. There really aren't enough words that follow the both pattern to teach as a whole unit, but you could throw it in there as a heart word. All right, one final question is that someone asked why the tools for reading word wall materials didn't contain all of the phonemes. So here is an image of my poster that I use. Now, I don't work for this company. I do use their tools. I find that it supports a number of the materials that I do choose to use in class. So I think this is great. There are 44 phonemes in our language. So I did a little survey here, and there are 46 sound cards here, okay? 44 for our phonemes, plus an additional card for schwa, right? Representing a and I, and an additional card for k, because of the frequency where you can see k as a C and k as a K. So I actually think this program did a really excellent job of explaining the phonemes. And I think that the tool and the color coding contained is super handy. So I will note that in the materials that you can buy these student desk cards, those desk cards do not contain all of the phonemes. But instructionally, this makes sense for me because when you're using desk cards, you're usually talking about very young children, and very young children probably wouldn't be learning to spell words with all of these phonemes. They would use, probably the top 40 most of the time. Maybe getting into vowel teams in a very good year. All right, next week, my fellow
moderators will be presenting on syllables and syllable types. And so if you feel like you could use more professional knowledge in this area, I recommend that you tune in. I know I went extremely fast tonight. However, most of what I learned and what I presented to you can be found online with a little Google search. Also, if you have specific questions, you can add more questions to the burning questions, or you could post basic, simple questions in the comments here, and I'll be happy to respond. I hope that you found this informative. It was sure fun preparing for it. I'll see you guys soon. Keep up the good work. Bye.
That was great. Thanks, Jennifer.
Oh, it was fun. Thank you.
Good.
I put a little note in the final piece about the sound wall. You know, the kit from Tools for Reading comes with flashcards, and I also have these great posters. And after the fact, I realized that the phoneme zh is not represented on that poster because that poster was more about spelling, but it is represented in the flashcards. So the person who asked the question was concerned that there weren't enough phonemes represented, and I really think that they did a nice job, and they're all there in the flashcards.
Very good. All right, folks, that's a wrap. That's the end of our show for tonight. I just love saying that.
Keep fighting the good fight, teachers, and we'll see you next week for, I believe, syllable types.
Yep. Have a good week, everyone. Keep up the work. All right. Good night. Good night.